It all started when I took that stupid test back in August. It was right before the school year started when my mother received a letter in the mail regarding my academics. Apparently, since I was in the local gifted and talented program, a new charter school was interested in testing me to see if I qualified for a scholarship. "Dave," my mom asked, "would you be interested in going to a private school for your freshman year of high school rather than going to public school at North?" She seemed pretty excited about this, since there was no way she could afford to send me to a private school without a full scholarship. Being a single woman who worked a crappy job didn't offer her offspring many upscale opportunities. "Sure, I guess," I replied. I wasn't really that enthusiastic about going to North. Truthfully, I was a very good student, but I really didn't fit into the decaying urban jungle we lived in. North High really wasn't much more than a holding pen for people on their way to county, with a graduation rate of less than 35%. Not exactly academia. A scrawny, 5 feet 4 inches, 115 pounds bookworm like me was a ripe target for abuse, and I knew it. Junior high really hadn't been a lot of fun, and now the creeps I'd have to dodge were going to be consistently 6 inches taller and 100 pounds heavier. "Well, then you'll be interested in this," she said as she proffered a letter and an envelope. Inside there was a brochure, an application, a letter, and a return envelope. The brochure showed what appeared to be a rather nice, but small school that looked well manicured, almost like a smaller version of an Ivy League college. I glanced at the application and letter, and it simply stated that there was to be a test held at the local high school for gifted students for entrance into this school, as well as an interview right afterward. What caught my eye was that if I did well enough on this, I could have 4 years of tuition, room, board, books, everything, at this school. I hardly glanced at the name, Wollstonecroft. Wow, I thought. This was my ticket out of here. In this neighborhood, it was only a matter of time before I had the bad luck of catching a random bullet, or the less random mugging followed by a shiv to the ribs. "Okay, Mom, I'll take the test. I know I'll have to move out if I make it, but I don't know if I'll ever have a chance like this again." "I know," she said with a somewhat grim smile, "but I know I can't provide this for you on my own. I'll take you to the exam. Just remember, however this turns out, I'll support you." "Thanks," I said glibly. At the time, I had no idea how far that support would have to go. I wasn't at all worried about the test. The local schools weren't all that challenging since they were interested in turning out a product and not scholars. I read voraciously all the time on my own though, and my mom had always supplied me with whatever books I wanted. Usually in class all I did was read them on my own, having long since finished any work that had been assigned. The test rolled around on Friday, and I had finished the application well in advance, and very neatly using an old IBM manual typewriter. I wore some of my better clothes. They weren't much to speak of, but I looked presentable. I didn't want to kill the test and then look like an urchin for the interview. When I walked into the classroom at the high school where the test was being given, it took me a minute to realize that all the gifted students in there taking the test with me were boys. This is sort of weird, I thought to myself. Usually around here it's the girls who are more likely to be the good students. Then it dawned on me that this wasn't a co-ed school. Of course. Duh. No wonder there hadn't been a block for sex on the application. At the front of the room there was a very attractive-looking woman, who appeared to be just out of college by her age. Despite her attractiveness, she looked somewhat severe in her gray businesslike skirt and white blouse, and ill at ease, as if she weren't really comfortable here for some reason. I thought for a moment that the room seemed fine, then my thoughts shifted to the massive test on the table in front of her. I took a seat near the front of the room and sat down, nibbling nervously on the eraser number 2 pencil I had brought with me. A few minutes passed and a few more students shuffled in. Finally, the woman stepped forward and addressed us. "Good morning. My name is Ms. Madsen and I will be administering this test today. This is a comprehensive exam covering math, science, English, history, spatial relationships, logic, and vocabulary. It is timed. Try to finish as quickly as possible, since you will receive additional points for each minute you finish early. After you have finished, go down the hall to the left and go to room 115. Knock on the door, request permission to enter from Ms. Dobbins, and she will conduct your interview. I don't have to remind you that if you are caught cheating here today, you will be removed from this room and will be removed from all consideration for enrollment at this school. Are there any questions? She looked around for a moment. All right, pass the test around. Do not open it or begin until I tell you to. She handed the stack to a boy I vaguely knew from another school in the district, and the stack was quickly distributed. All right, begin. I tore into it, and I was shocked. This thing looked frightening. I thought I would be lucky to answer 60% of the questions correctly. Ms. Madsen wasn't kidding that this thing was comprehensive. Hours passed, I sweated and worked until I felt numb when I finished. Surprisingly, I was the first to hand it in the room. Oh well, I thought I guess what I don't know helped me finish more quickly. The other boys in the room looked strained and grim too, though, giving me a little hope. I left the room, took a left and went to go find Ms. Dobbins. It wasn't hard, but I had to stop for a second to remember to knock before I went in. I lightly tapped on the frosted window and asked Ms. Dobbins, "May I come in?" A firm voice replied, "Yes, please come in." It looked to be the vice principal's office, with a desk and a relatively comfortable chair placed in front of it. Ms. Dobbins was sitting at the desk. Ms. Dobbins was older, perhaps in her mid-40s, but very attractive as well. For some reason she brought to mind Sigourney Weaver. She was wearing a professional-looking outfit similar to Ms. Madsen's, but she looked at me with outward warmth, though I could feel her sizing me up. Oddly, it felt like a physical examination, as if she were watching how I moved, how big I was, almost like a piece of meat. The moment passed, and the look faded from around her eyes and mouth. "Please, have a seat. I have all your applications here. You must be David." "Yes, ma'am," I replied. She scribbled something on the notepad in front of her. "Good manners for one your age. Excellent, albeit uncommon these days. You have excellent grades, but I want to know a bit more about you. For instance, at Wollstonecroft you will be required to participate in sports. Which ones do you think you would like?" Again, the look of scrutiny returned, and I knew I was being tested. This wasn't a good line of questions for me. I was no physical specimen, and knew I'd never be much bigger. I swallowed hard and decided that honesty was the best policy, as my grandfather used to say, plus it makes remembering what you said a lot easier. "Well, ma'am, I know I'm not real big, so I would rather do things that don't require a lot of size. Gymnastics in the winter, I suppose, and cross-country in the warmer months, especially since I like being outdoors a lot. Not that you could tell in this city." I smiled wanly at my attempt at humor. Good. She took a few more notes. "Do you consider yourself flexible? Will you make changes in your life easily?" "I think so, ma'am. I am going off to boarding school pretty quickly." More notes. I was a little nervous, but hiding it well, I thought. "When you start something, do you finish? Say, for instance, a model or a puzzle?" she queried, looking at me intently. "Absolutely, ma'am. It really bothers me when I don't finish something, anything really." A light lit behind her eyes, and the next question felt almost a formality. "At Wollstonecroft we wear uniforms that are a bit traditional. You will be required to wear them. Does that bother you? Not really, ma'am, I replied, since the hand-me-downs I wear now are pretty ugly, plus I don't dare wear nice clothes since it would draw bad attention to me in this neighborhood. No more notes were taken, and she chuckled. I can certainly see that. I can't tell you how you just did on the test, but I will tell you that as far as this interview is concerned, you are an exceptional candidate for our school. I sat upright, an unbidden smile showing through. Really? Thank you. I'm really anxious to be a part of Wollstonecraft. I'll do anything to get a good education and get away from here forever. Ms. Dobbins smiled. I'm certain you are. In fact, that's just the spirit we need. Part 2. The test results arrived only a few days later. This place sure worked fast. I retrieved them from the mail and hurried upstairs, anxious to see how I had done. I gave in to anticipation and literally tore open the envelope. I was stunned. I had scored in the top 5th percentile. It took me a moment to realize that there was a letter in the remains of the envelope along with the printout of the results. I unfolded it and read onward. Congratulations on being accepted to Wollstonecraft Academy. You are taking an important step in your life, which will change it forever. You will be challenged continually, but we are sure you will emerge as one of our best and brightest, a true herald of the future of our society. Report to the old main building on September 1st. You will not need anything besides the clothes on your back. The Academy will provide everything else that you need. Please bring your academic, medical, and dental records with you. Good luck, and again, congratulations. We have the greatest hopes for you and the rest of your class. Sincerely, Dr. Donna Dobbins, Superintendent, Wollstonecraft Academy. I could scarcely believe it. I had made it. I had, though that test had finished me, but I guess it was just meant to be hard. When my mom arrived home, I showed her the letter. I'm sorry I have to go, Mom, but I need this. I felt heavy at saying this, but I remained excited about my future. Dave, I'll have a hard time with you leaving, but this what's is best for you. I'll go with you and give whatever parental consent forms they need. She paused a moment, then hugged me. I was the same height as her, and I secretly suspected I might not get much taller. The last weeks of summer passed quietly. I stayed out of trouble and tried to catch up on things I thought I might have missed at the lousy junior high I had gone to. When it came time to go, it was very anticlimactic. We got up very early in the morning, around 3 a.m. I followed the instructions in the letter, took nothing but a decent set of clothes, which I wore, and my mom drove me off in our beat-up Honda Civic wagon. It was nearly a 5-hour drive to get there, and I was tired. I couldn't sleep though. I was just too excited. The miles rolled by, and I couldn't help but let my brain mull over all the possibilities this place would have for me. We finally arrived, right on time, and parked outside the old main building. There was a long line of boys, waiting in line to go inside, all wearing various clothes. I guess they were all registering just like me. We got in line and I looked them over. The other boys were all very different in most respects, all races. I even saw a yarmulke being worn by someone in the crowd. They all had some things in common, which made me wonder, but only for a second. No one appeared to be wealthy, and none of them were very tall, and almost all of them were thin, with a few average builds among them. No overweight kids. Well, I guess they wanted people to be physically fit, but short. Maybe all us little guys were just drawn to academics since we weren't good at any of the boy things to do out there. We reached the front desk after a while, and here's where they split us up. A very beautiful brown-haired girl sat behind the desk, handing out forms for people to fill out, and directing the boys to the right, parents to the left to fill out paperwork. She had wide, brown eyes and a bit of sadness there too, as she watched the parents and teenagers hugging before they parted. My mom sighed, gave me a big, long hug. I'm proud of you, but I really will miss you. What you're doing makes you one of the bravest people I have ever known. I could tell she wanted to cry, and was a bit embarrassed. She tried to put on a good face, took the paperwork for her, and said I'll see you at Thanksgiving. I know you'll study hard. I'm just afraid I won't recognize you then. I supposed she felt like I was growing up too fast, but her comment made me a bit uneasy. Wouldn't recognize me? The girl behind the desk motioned me to the right, and I went around the corner. The line continued there into what looked like a lobby, where other boys were sitting around talking. A short woman of Asian descent in a nurse's scrubs motioned to me to come over to her. Your medical records, please, she said with outstretched hand. Oh, yes. Here they are. I replied somewhat out of it. There was a lot to take in at the moment. Okay, David, have a seat over there, please. We'll call your name when we're ready for the medical exam, she said, pointing to a somewhat unoccupied portion of the room. I sat down next to another boy, who looked to be Hispanic. Hi, I said. My name's Dave. Martin, he replied. Where you from? The DC area. How about you? Well, my folks are from Mexico, but I grew up in Phoenix. What do you know about this place? Martin asked. Well, supposedly this is a top college prep school. I don't know for sure about anything though. Just that it has to be better than the public school I would have gone to. This looked like my best choice. I explained. No kidding? Me too. I had to get out of the barrio. My mother was terrified I'd end up dead like my older brother. Just too many gangs and drugs. I didn't have time to ponder what Martin had told me because the nurse called Martin's name from the door at the back of the lobby. I'll see you round later, he said and headed back. It wasn't more than a few minutes later when the same nurse that I had met earlier called my name and gestured for me to follow. I got up and wandered to the backing trail. There were 4 different offices back there, one of which door was open and unoccupied. It had a standard doctor's office furnishing, exam table, refrigerator, steel tables, and the smell of isopropyl alcohol. A woman, apparently a doctor by way of her stethoscope, was outside of it holding the door open for me. Hello, David. I'm Dr. Stewart. We just need to do an entry physical exam to make sure you're okay before the academic year starts. How are you feeling? She said as she closed the door behind her. Good, but a little nervous about starting here, I guess. Well, that's normal. I need you to take off all your clothes and lie down on the table there. She sensed me tensing up at the suggestion and laughed. It's no big deal. Trust me, I enjoy this about as much as you. I reluctantly complied, taking off my clothes and laying on the cold sanitary paper. The nurse who had taken my records was standing next to the table with my records and a pen. Dr. Stewart took my temperature, blood pressure, and pulse, repeating the results to the Asian nurse who I had seen when we first came in. Just relax now, said the doctor, I need to take a few anthropomorphic measurements here. She started by measuring my facial features, and moved her way down. Eventually she reached my groin. I was nervous, but I tried to hide it. Testicles descended, not fully matured. Pubic hair light, penile length 1.5 inches flaccid. David, please answer truthfully, have you had a nocturnal emission, also called a wet dream? She remarked without much interest, as she fondled my cold, scared manhood. At this point, she had both my testes firmly in her grasp. Lying was out of the question. Yes ma'am. I think so. I said, blushing furiously. She seemed unfazed. Do you masturbate? Came the next query. Yes. I said in very quiet voice. My skin felt like it was burning. I was so embarrassed. Dr. Stewart finally seemed to notice my awkwardness and moved on to other portions of my anatomy. She took more measurements, listened to my breath sounds and chest. Roll over, please. We need to give you a vaccination booster, based on your records. The nurse took a vial out of the refrigerator and unwrapped a syringe that she had taken from one of the cabinets. The liquid inside seemed like it was more viscous than I remembered most vaccinations. Maybe it was just because it was cold. The needle on the syringe looked really long, so I knew I was getting a deep one in my butt. Just relax, David, it will make it hurt a little less. Plus, you'll bruise up if you're tense back there. I felt the prick of the rather large needle as it entered my cheek, and I felt the icy chill of the fluid as it entered me. For some reason, it excited me a little. Okay, we're all done here, David. We'll need to see you next month for a checkup. Please make an appointment. The front desk also, we looked at your medical record. You came up as a little bit anemic. I'm going to write you script for that. Okay? She scribbled something, then tore it off a pad and handed it to me. Nurse Nguyen will show you the way to our pharmacy here when you get your clothes back on. I didn't have to be asked twice to do that, and I was out of that office shortly thereafter. Nurse Nguyen touched my elbow as I stepped out and pointed to the right. The pharmacy is through those double doors. After you've picked up your iron supplement, come back here and we'll have someone show you where to pick up your uniforms and school supplies. Okay, thanks. I said, somewhat in a daze. I went back out to the lobby area and made an appointment with the woman behind the desk for early October. I reversed myself and went to the pharmacy and was a little surprised to see other boys in line to the window. Martin was a couple spots in line in front of me. I wondered what was wrong with him. I guessed that we all had our own little problems, asthma and such, though. It only took a moment to hand the slip of paper to the female pharmacist behind the counter, then get a small bag with a bottle in return. Just read the directions on them, dear, okay? Try to take them with food, and drink plenty of water, she urged me as she handed me the bag. I took it and went back to the lobby, where I saw some of the other boys leaving the building through a side entrance. I followed them and found myself outside again. This place sure did look nice, even better than the brochures even. Ivy, trimmed lawns, maple and oak trees. I felt a rush of gratitude that I was going to school in a place this nice. It didn't take long to see where they were going, since there was another line going into another old-looking building. I placed myself at the end and looked to see if I recognized anyone. I didn't. The line moved quickly and I soon found myself inside looking at what was almost a warehouse of supplies. The boys were moving along assembly line style, receiving all sorts of things. They first handed me a large bag, plus a few smaller laundry bags. I moved along and the next girl behind the row of tables looked up and asked, "What size undergarments do you wear?" She looked young, only a few years older than me. I wondered what she was doing here at a boys' school. Maybe she was a teacher's daughter or something. She was really pretty though, so I didn't mind the thought of having other girls like her around. 28 waist, ma'am. I stuttered a little. You would think this would be easier after the physical I just had. Okay, she said, and reached under the table and handed me a pack of 10 pairs of white underwear. They looked a little odd, but I didn't have time to think it over before I moved down the line. As I moved on down, it was pretty much the same thing. They asked my size, and gave me more uniforms. The uniform consisted of what looked like dark blue shorts, but kind of flared at the bottom. It reminded me of a skirt, actually. The shirts were all white, buttoned down, and collared. It looked a little big to me, but I'd have to try it on to figure it out. They also issued a thin belt and some deck-style shoes and low-cut socks. A little weird, but it was all paid for, so I wasn't concerned. They also gave us bed linens, cleaning supplies for our rooms, a kind of narrow wristwatch, and a map of the campus. They also gave me cloths for PE. The running shoes were a nondescript white, and the shorts and shirt looked a little small actually. They were white and red, with a crest on the left breast of the shirt, apparently Wollstonecraft's emblem. When I got to the end of the line, they recorded all the stuff that I had in a folder with my name on it. Another pretty girl gave me my room assignment and my class schedule. Go on up to your dorm room and get into your school uniform, please. There will be an orientation lecture at 11 o'clock this morning. You're expected to be in your uniform from here on out, and don't be late. After orientation, you'll have some time to get lunch and to get your books. After that, you can go get acquainted with the school grounds and some of the other freshmen. Any questions? Nope, thanks, I replied. I hoisted the bag full of stuff onto my back and walked back outside. I set it down and looked at the map, trying to get my bearings. According to the map, there were dorms for people according to their year, so I was in the freshman dorm. I briefly wondered what the upper class would be like and when we'd meet them. Eventually, I figured out where the dorm was and headed off that way. I wandered in and found my way to my room, 252, on the second floor. None of the doors had locks. I guessed that they were pretty serious about an honor code here. Well, I suppose they didn't call it an academy for nothing. The room itself was a bit sparsely furnished, but it included all the basics of bunk beds, an open study area, a bathroom, and a large window looking out into a long grassy, tree-lined plaza. Some basic appliances were there, like an alarm clock, mop, broom, dustpan, iron, and other essentials for keeping the place, and myself, clean and on time. Someone had been there before me, and had already placed their things in one of the two wall closets next to the bed. I dropped my bag and began unpacking it into the closet next to my bed. It didn't take long, since there wasn't much stuff. With everything where I wanted it, I decided to get into the school uniform. The underwear was still weird. It was tighter than briefs would normally be in the front, but there was a little extra fabric at the hips and right under my backside. Still, the cotton was a very smooth blend, and felt really nice. The shorts really were a little flared, with pleats on the sides. The white shirt didn't seem odd until I tried to button it. The buttons seems wrong somehow. Why the heck were they on the wrong side, I thought. Not that it mattered, they still worked the same way. Also, there was no top button on the long-sleeve white shirt. I put on the rest of the stuff and looked at myself in the full-length mirror across from the closet. I looked a bit like an English schoolboy, but a little on the sissy side. Oh well, I thought, as long as we all look the same, no one can say a thing. Right as I thought that, I felt a little nauseous for a moment. I wasn't sure if it was because I was tired, or from the excitement of the day. My life was changing so rapidly here, that I was having a hard time taking it all in. I just had no idea how much. I picked my head up off my arms and pushed away from the wall, while taking a deep breath and letting it out, trying to clear my head and make the slight queasy feeling I had go away. Looking at the school-issued watch, I realized that I only had maybe 20 minutes to get to the orientation at the amphitheater. Since I didn't know exactly where that was, I grabbed my map and class schedule and headed out. The school was very pretty, but laid out a bit haphazardly. It seemed that some of the buildings were built at the turn of the century, then a group of new ones put in a few years ago, including the dorms. I re-entered the warm September morn furtively, looking this way and that, trying to get my bearings again. I paused for a moment, though, feeling that something wasn't right. It took a moment, but then I realized it was the sensation of air working its way up my shorts to my briefs that I was feeling. I'd have to talk to someone about these things. They were way too big at the bottom. Not that it didn't feel nice on a day like this, though. On that thought, I went back to land, navigating my way to orientation. A moment or two later, I saw some buildings that looked like they were in the right direction and headed that way. The process of finding my way there was pretty easy, just find one building at a time, and eventually I found my way there. The auditorium was a large building that probably could have seated 1,000 students. The seats were wood and cushioned with maroon-colored pads. They looked both comfortable and elegant, as if some money went into this place. At the front there was a large, raised wooded stage behind an orchestra pit, the pine wood gleaming under the glare of stage lights. It too was in great condition. If you liked drama, this would be a good school to attend, I thought. The exterior and facade of the amphitheater looked old-fashioned and turn of the century, and the interior was too, but all of it had been recently put in, within the past few years I guessed, and everything was in good shape. Apparently gifted students had a bit less destructive appetites than what I was used to. Back in DC you had to hold your pee all day since the 8th graders always destroyed the bathrooms, no matter how many times they were repaired. By the end of the year, and the end of the budget, they gave up. There were perhaps 50 students already there, with more filing in behind me. For a while I gawked at them, but realized I was blocking traffic. Someone tapped on my shoulder and I looked that direction. No one was there, so I turned the other. It was Marco, grinning like the Cheshire Cat, and another boy I'd never met. The other boy was really short and thin, perhaps 5 feet 2 inches and maybe 100 pounds soaking wet. He had short brown hair and wore an intense, but curious expression. You got the impression that he was exploring several frames of thought at once, and most of them were probably pretty deep, which made him brilliant, if somewhat continually distracted. "Dave! Hey, come sit with us. This is Robert, he's from Phoenix too." "What are the odds, huh?" Marco said, his outgoing nature apparent. "Oh hi, I'm Robert Tanner," the thin young man said, extending his hand. "Don't let him fool you with the nothing big is out west stuff. Phoenix is getting to be huge, so the odds aren't that bad. Let's go grab a seat." "Cool, Robert, my name's Dave. You'll have to tell me about living out west sometime." "I don't suppose you rode a horse to school or anything though," I replied as we shook hands briefly. Robert looked around, almost bird-like, and hurried off towards an area of the auditorium that was near the front and center of the room. I got the feeling I'd be going to him for help with my calculus a lot as the years wore on. We all took our seats together there, and didn't have to wait long. All told, there were about 100 students here, all of whom had complied with the uniform policy. All of this was giving me a good feeling, really. Most of the schools I'd been at, you were lucky if you could just get everyone to show up, much less do it properly. Apparently Wollstonecraft Academy was very picky about who it let in. Money alone wasn't enough, and neither was simply brains. I wondered if I should ask Marco and Robert what they thought this school was looking for, but Miss Dobbin's entrance interrupted my train of thought. She strode briskly to a podium located at center stage, took the microphone off of it and addressed us while walking around the stage. "Good morning, and welcome to the Wollstonecraft Academy. Our history is not nearly as long as you would think, though, despite the age of these buildings. I've seen many of you admiring this campus, and I'm glad to see that. We're trying very hard to make this institution one you can be proud of and even grow to love. Our goal, for you, is to produce the future leaders and scholars of tomorrow. Period. Now, how are we going to accomplish this? Developing your mind is one thing. Certain inner-city magnet schools have done a very admirable job of that through the International Baccalaureate program. However, this fails to address many students who do not have any access to such a program, nor does it address the lack of safety and social needs of their students. They remain isolated and imperiled. We believe in creating well-rounded people who have developed their bodies as well. This academy requires you to participate in sports. However, no one will be turned away from a sport. If all 105 of you want to be on the swim team, all of you will. We will not be like a traditional school, however, in that we do not promote contact sports, or sports where you will not be actively involved at all times. It doesn't do anyone any good for you to cripple your bodies now playing football, to stand around gawking in right field doing nothing, or to be putting in a half-hearted effort into a sport you're not interested in. In order for you to grow, you will have to be self-motivated. Well, now that I have downplayed the academics a bit, I can see some of the faculty in the back glaring at me. In truth, this will be the hardest academic program you could have hoped to have faced. All of you will take pretty much the same courses during your first year. After that, you will be able to branch out more into areas of academia that interest you. However, keep in mind we are a college preparatory school with limited resources, so esoterica is out of the question, no matter how interesting you think it is. As it is, you will have to retain at least a 2.15 average to remain at this school. As much as we hate this, there will be some of you out there who lack the motivation and self-discipline to meet this standard. You may be given an opportunity to bring your grades up, but barring extraordinary circumstances, you will be expelled. We also have a strong desire to produce ethical graduates, and an honor code encompasses everything we do here. Anyone who is caught lying, cheating, or stealing will be summarily expelled and receive incomplete grades for the semester. Thankfully, because our screening process is so rigorous, we believe that fewer than 5% of you will be lost this way. The teachers, and in some cases, professors, are here to help you. If you need extra instruction, visit them after classes are over during the 1-hour period we provide before sports. I must confess, though, that this class is special. You are our great experiment. I assume that you have noticed that there are very few men here? This is because you are the first boys to attend what used to be an all-girls boarding school. Based on recent cases though, we had to open our doors up to everyone. You will see your female classmates when you start class tomorrow. Outside of class, though, you won't have any interaction with them until we have evaluated you on an individual basis. When we feel that you have developed enough and have earned our trust, you will be integrated with the rest of the student body. For now though, the girls' dorms are entirely off limits to you. Anyone found there without express permission will be expelled, regardless of any extenuating circumstances. No ifs, ands, or buts. We are an almost entirely private-funded organization, and our sponsors expect the best from you. This institution was founded in order to give select students the opportunity to develop to their full potential, when they might have otherwise been held back by circumstance like poverty or physical disability. You are among the brightest, most motivated students we could find in the country. Your potential is unlimited, and we are here to help you unlock it. For many of you, without this chance, you might never have found the key. Well, in any case, I see that I'm running overtime here. If you ever have any questions, concerns, worries, ideas, anything that will make you or the school better, my door is open. In any case, this afternoon I'd like for each of you to get with your academic advisors back over at the old main building and to pick out a sport you would like to try this fall season. Good luck to each of you. I've got a good feeling about your class. With the speech completed, Dr. Dobbins put the mic back and left the stage to her right. Another woman, whom I didn't recognize, took her place and addressed us briefly. She looked to be in her late 30s, and wore a very professional-looking suit. Small, round glasses boxed in an oval face with straight dark hair. She looked studious, but also a little distracted. I thought she and Robert would get along fine if he were in a class of hers. "Good morning, I'm Ms. Phillips, I'm the academic dean here. I just wanted to introduce myself. The cafeteria's open now. Usually it's just called Steenham Hall by the students here. The counselors will be seeing students until 4 o'clock this afternoon. Afterwards, get cleaned up please and come on over to the gymnasium. We'll be holding a mixer there for you to get a bite to eat, and to meet the faculty. Hopefully, this will give you the chance to feel a bit more comfortable on your first day here. Today's schedule, class schedules, and weekly planners are printed out in the front lobby of the auditorium, and you can also find them on the LAN on your computers back in your dorm room. Do you have any questions?" One daring lad, who apparently wasn't all that hungry, raised his hand. "Yes, you there. How can I help?" "Ma'am, my name's Craig Pelagio, and I was wondering, what about our weekends? Will we be allowed out?" "What are we to be doing?" he asked, a little plaintively I thought. A fair enough question. Your first semester here you will not be leaving the campus until Thanksgiving, or if you quit. There's plenty of studying, athletics, socializing, leisure reading, and even special guest lecturers scheduled to keep you entertained every weekend until Christmas. Every Saturday morning your rooms will be subject to a health and comfort inspection to make sure you are keeping up the rooms that have been donated to you. After the holiday break, those of you on the dean's list, my list, will earn the privilege of going out. I assure you, though, that will be a select few. In all truth, we expect this year to be the hardest, and it is a test to see who has the dedication to see this program through. You'll also find what activities are scheduled on your computers as well on our local area network. Any other questions? Seeing no more boys desirous of her expostulations, she bid us welcome once again and departed. "Well," I said, turning to my two new friends, "are you guys hungry?" I didn't want to confess that I was a little queasy still, but the feeling was going away and I was feeling some other rumblings. "Sure," said Marco, "but I have a bad feeling I'm not going to get any good Mexican food until I go home again." I had no idea what good Mexican food was, really, but I wasn't sure about cafeteria food either. It's never had a good reputation anywhere. We gathered up our stuff and headed off. I thought I remembered passing Steenham Hall earlier. It seemed to be a big building. It wasn't hard to find, and the inside of it was a lot different than I expected. There was the traditional cafeteria line, but that's where the similarities ended. The hall was T-shaped, and the big vaulted ceilings and heavy wooden furniture made me think for a moment of a Viking long feast hall. It looked very old, and made me suddenly think of the old Norwegian stuff my grandmother had, that her father had brought from the old country. We got in line, and I was really surprised by the food. There was plenty of salad and fruit, and the meat they served looked to be either broiled fish fillets or chicken breasts on Spanish rice. Not bad at all, really. No greasy meat substitutes served in fatty glop, like in grade school and junior high. We all took our seats after taking what we wanted. No sugared sodas were offered, just juice, water, and skim milk. Well, at least these gals were health conscious. I guess that my mom might not recognize me after all, between the sports and the Twinkie-less diet. "Robert, how did you end up here?" I asked. I sort of was curious if their backgrounds were like mine. "Well," he said between bites, "I suppose the same way you did. Had some gifted classes, I did okay on the state standardized tests. I took their test and had a short interview. I got the feeling that my interview was a bit of a formality, after the first minute or two. I guessed he had scored very well on the tests. I thought I would like Robert, he seemed to be pretty modest. He didn't mention how hard he thought the entrance exam was, so it was either modesty, brilliance, or both. My folks don't have any money. My mom stays home with my baby brother, and my dad was an engineer, right up until he got laid off from the power plant when they closed it down. I guess no one needs nuclear engineers anymore, since there's no new plants out there. I'm sorry, I said. I guessed that Marco probably had a similar tale. Yeah, my mom was home with all my younger brothers and sisters. Dad wasn't home very much, he was always at work. It didn't pay much though. I did pretty much what you did, Robert. I took the test, I came here. Mom was so glad I had this chance. Dad wasn't too crazy about it for some reason. I'm the oldest, and I think he wanted me back home taking care of the house or something. Yeah, I agreed. I'm pretty much the same. I haven't a clue where my dad ended up, and my mom was a daycare worker. She likes kids, but $10 an hour doesn't go very far. I guess this school is here to help gifted poor kids. I don't know, but so far it seems like we're pretty lucky to be here. They nodded, and the conversation drifted on to other things. We were, unfortunately, academics to the core, so it revolved around books, science, and movies. Lunch went quickly, and we cleared our own trays. We all cleaned up after ourselves, and I noticed that the other tables were cleaned as well. It was so good to be away from all the destructive behavior I had been dodging and ashamed of at school before. Old Main wasn't more than a 10-minute walk away. We went back to the front entrance and saw that the door off to the left of the entry area was marked Admissions and Academics Department. Going in, we saw that there was a sign-up sheet for each of the counselors, based on out last name's place in the alphabet. We each signed up and found a spot in the room to wait. The lines were shorter than I would have thought. Perhaps people were sleeping off the lunch, or the stress of the morning, studying, or just exploring this huge place. There seemed to be several hundred acres of almost untouched land up here. My counselor, Ms. Wambach, sent out her current student and called me in shortly after. I was a bit startled to see that she was a girl, and looked kind of young like us. Maybe she was a sophomore, or maybe she was one of the girls in our class. David, she called, please come on back and we'll take a look at your schedule, plus maybe your academic track. I took a seat in her small, cluttered office. It looked as if a file cabinet, somewhere, had exploded. Still, she found my file without any difficulty. Have a seat, oh, here, let me get that, she said as she took a pile of papers off the now unburied chair. I took the seat and expressed my thanks. Well, I've looked at your academic record, and you seem to be in good shape here really. You're fairly strong in all the subjects you'll be taking this fall. You shouldn't have a problem with your 6 classes. It's just a baseline of history, chemistry, English composition, algebra 2, philosophy, and government. However, have you given any thought to the sport you'd like to play this fall? Well, not really, Ms. Wambach. I haven't even seen the list actually. Really? Well, my apologies. Here's the list of what's going on this fall. I'm sure at least one of them will interest you. Also, there's a number of extracurricular activities that we have available in the evenings. Orchestra, chess club, Shakespearean studies, science club, drama troupe, choir. I have a list right here. You won't be part of the girls' groups just yet, though. We're easing you into this school as best we can. This is a bit much for you, really. I took the 2 sheets and looked them over. The selection of sports was really pretty good. Soccer, swimming, lacrosse, field hockey, cross-country, weight training with aerobics, tennis, racquetball, the list was pretty extensive. I wasn't sure, but I felt like asking a question. Ma'am, cross-country does all their running outdoors, right? Yes, of course, except on days when the weather's really bad, then they use the indoor track in the field house. Why do you ask? I blushed. I wasn't sure I wanted to admit how pathetic my childhood had been, and how poverty-stricken I had been at times. Well, I looked down at my feet. I really almost never got to see real natural forests and stuff back in DC. At least, not spend a significant amount of time there. We were always indoors, or on concrete. Oh, David, I know what you mean. I can sign you up now on the computer to do cross-country if you'd like. She said, happily. She was really very considerate and encouraging actually. They'll be having an organizational meeting after school tomorrow in the Liberal Arts Building, room 222. Ms. Waylands is the freshman coach and an economics teacher here. She's a great lady. She's really popular as a teacher too. Although, I wouldn't believe all the stories she has to tell. What do you mean? I wondered. Haha, she chuckled, you'll see soon enough. Don't worry, it's a lot of fun, and it's all very low pressure. Do your best, and you'll get along great. Is there anything else you're wondering about? Nope, I said brightly, I think I can handle this. That's the spirit, but don't be glib, dear. This will actually be just about the toughest 4 months of your life so far. But I'm glad to see you so optimistic. Take care. Oh, and if you have a moment, take a look at the stuff on the LAN. It will explain a lot of things. Just type your last name in at the login and your social security number, and that will get you in. She opened the door for me and said goodbye. I walked out, feeling pretty good. I felt like if I wasn't on top of my situation, I was getting there. The trip back to my dorm room was a short one, now that I was starting to get the feel for where everything was on campus. When I went into the room, I was a bit surprised to find Martin there. He was laying on the lower bunk looking over one of our textbooks. Hey, I figured out where we're going to be rooming together after I saw your bag. Pretty cool, huh? Yeah, I was wondering whose stuff it was in the closet. I'm pretty tired. Do you mind if I take a nap on the upper bunk? I asked. I'd been up since 4 a.m., and I was really starting to feel it after lunch. Sure, no problem. Hey, did you see all the stuff they left for us in the desk here? We've got a computer here, but they left notebooks, pencils, pens, all sorts of office supply stuff for us to use in class. I guess they really do provide just about everything. Martin sounded kind of excited about it, but I could tell he was coming down off the emotional high too. I glanced around inside of the desk and realized I wouldn't need much of anything this semester. I was all set to start. I glanced at the desktop computer on the desk and realized we'd be sharing it. Not a problem, I thought. I can always find something else to do while he's on it. As I was going to get the linens out of my closet, I remembered the iron supplements that the doc had prescribed. I picked out the bottles from the medicine cabinet. For some reason, the contents of the bottle were listed by their chemical name and not by a commercial name. Weird. I mentally shrugged and took one of each like I was supposed to. With that thought, I grabbed my linens and put them up on my bed. It was a bit of a challenge on a top bunk, but it only took a minute, and only a bit later I was asleep. I awoke considerably later, with the shadows beginning to lengthen outside. Like most afternoon naps, it left me feeling pretty groggy. The clicking of a compute keyboard and mouse told me that Martin was looking around on the computer. At first he didn't take notice of me waking up, but my groaning and rummaging eventually caught his attention. Wow, you were out cold for over 3 hours there. I've been on the LAN for an hour here. This thing is great. All of our teachers have web pages, notes, email accounts, daily event calendars, and the departments have the syllabus for each class. It's really cool. We've got email too. Not that I have anyone to write to right now. He let out a laugh at the last one. I assumed his school districts had been as poor as mine. I'll have to take a look as soon as you're off. What time is it? I said, mostly to myself as I looked at my watch. It was a little past 5. You want to get a bite for dinner here in just a minute? I guess that I can take a look at it after the mixer this evening. Sure, let me log off and comb my hair. Speaking of hair, have you seen a barber shop around here? Martin observed. No, I don't think so. Maybe all the upper-class girls don't need them, they just go to salons or something on break or on the weekends. I don't suppose this school has anything against long hair, though. I said, laughing. From ones I've seen so far, it's the norm. Thanksgiving's not that far anyhow. We headed out and found Robert, who lived upstairs from us. Finding the cafeteria was easy this time. The three of us were getting to be pretty close as we walked over. In unfamiliar surroundings, we were trying to hang on to whatever was familiar, and in this case it was each other's company. Steinem Hall again produced another more than passable meal. No fatty low-budget slime, mostly steamed and grilled white meat along with salads, soups, and rice or bread. No dessert either. These guys really did want to break us of bad habits. Time was passing a little more quickly now, and the time for the mixer rolled around pretty quickly. We finished dinner and went back to the dorm, where we all got cleaned up and got back into our uniforms. It was odd, but when I saw Martin getting dressed, the underwear he was wearing really did look like girls' underwear. I shook my head and tried to ignore what I felt to be an obviously homosexual thought. Was there something wrong with me? After this we gathered up again, with a map in hand, and went looking for the old gymnasium. The old gym was another converted old building, made of gray granite block. There were huge arched windows on all the walls, allowing what was left of the sunlight to filter in through the westward ones. We saw a few people filtering in through the tall wooden double doors, and followed them in. One of them was a girl, and I sort of wondered what was going on. The answer wasn't long in coming. Something a little less than half of the students in there were girls. My initial surprise faded quickly. Well, we were integrating this school, so it wasn't that strange when I stopped to think about it. Interspersed with them were our teachers. I didn't see a male one in the bunch. That one made me stop, but I decided I'd think about it more later on when I had more facts. I did see one familiar face, though, not that it was all that comforting. Ms. Madsen off to my left about 20 feet away. She still looked severe. The thought occurred to me that she must be in the mathematics department. I let out a small snicker and went to see if I could go find some of my teachers. As I wandered around, the boys and girls congregated in clumps. They looked like they were the same age as us, and were freshmen too. I didn't feel comfortable enough to approach any of the groups, so I kept looking for a teacher whose name I recognized. Finally, I found one, Ms. Wilkins. She was going to be my teacher in philosophy I. She was young and very attractive. Ms. Wilkins was rather tall, with honey blonde hair braided up behind her head. She was talking with a female student, so I casually ambled up to listen in and eventually introduce myself. Aristotle will be our primary focus here, along with the earliest Greek philosophers' ideas. The one I want to concentrate on is his ideas on what is best, or most good. I ignored my manners and butted in a bit. I'm sorry to interrupt, but what is the most good then, Ms. Wilkinson? My name's Dave Lansing, and I'll be in your third period class. Glad to see you're ready to jump right in, David. You've seen my name tag apparently. This here is Mindy. She'll be my class that period too. As for Aristotle, he believed that the highest good was in achieving your full potential. We'll leave the rest for class. Her voice had a mellifluous quality to it, and she had a placid manner to it. Her movements were well coordinated and self-possessed. Ma'am, I'm a little curious why we're taking philosophy as freshmen? Isn't that an advanced college class to take? I asked. A good question, but certainly the wrong track, David. Philosophy is the first thing you should learn in a classical education such as we provide here. I believe that this class will provide you a chance to really examine the world around you, including yourself, in ways you would never otherwise have considered. In all things to come, this knowledge will follow you, I believe. When you get the chance, ask some upper class about this course. I believe they've all found it to be a guiding force. Oh, I've gone a bit deep here. I'm looking forward to having you in the class. I'm sure you'll have a lot to contribute as well as to learn. She explained all this with a certain determination that I didn't have any idea the source of. Years later, I looked back and realized how important her class really had been to me. Another student came up to Ms. Wilkinson and the introductions continued. Mindy followed at my elbow for a moment and spoke my name. David? I'm Mindy Allen. She thrust out her hand in greeting. Mindy was a little taller than me, with very dark brown hair. She still had some growing to do, having a somewhat tomboyish build and hair only down to her shoulders, along with glasses. I shook her hand too. I seemed to instinctively like her. She seemed far more outgoing and self-confident than most girls I'd ever met. Don't worry about seeming contrary to Ms. Wilkinson. I think she likes good arguments in her class, as long as you think before you open your mouth. I let go of her hand and smiled involuntarily. I guess I'm in trouble, then. I joked. Obviously, she said with a wicked grin. Anyway, I'll be seeing you tomorrow. I want to go track down my other teachers here. I laughed at her jest. Okay, bye, was the most intelligent thing I could think of to say. I guess once a nerd, always a nerd. At least I was smiling foolishly, so it was at least amiable. I had no idea how much interaction I was going to have with the other half, but this seemed promising in some way. The rest of the evening passed pretty quickly. I managed to find all but one of my teachers and introduce myself. There really wasn't much more time than that, what with almost 200 students crowding them. I couldn't find Martin, but I did bump into Robert. Hey, I've found all my teachers. Are you ready to go? Yes, I've seen what I needed to hear. He said. The way he said it led me to believe he had come to some sort of conclusion. What do you mean? What was on your mind? I asked, curious to what was going through his mind. Well, I wasn't sure what the academics would be like at a formerly all-girls school. Women's institutions don't have the reputations that men's institutions traditionally do. This place, something special about it. I don't think anyone on the staff has less than a master's. Frankly, I'd be happy to go to a college with credentials and an attitude like this place has. Of course, based on male life expectancy in the old neighborhood, I'd be happy to reach the end of puberty, much less the inside of a college. Still, something isn't quite adding up here. He said, puzzled at the end. I don't know. It all seems a bit too good to be true. He said. Maybe, but I have another old phrase. Never look a gift horse in the mouth. I countered. True, he said, true. Even if it's not quite what we're expecting, it's still better than anything I would have hoped for prior to the beginning of this summer. It was my time to agree. By now, we'd reached the dorm and parted ways. He was right to an extent, but growing up where we did, you always had to wonder where the catch was, or who was going to jump out from the alley and whack you. Maybe it's just my well-honed, inner-city poor kid spidey sense making me a touch paranoid, I thought. Going into my room, I looked at my watch and realized that it was past 8:30, and I at least needed to log on and register. I did, and browsed through our intranet. Very nice, I thought. All sorts of information readily available. Plus, my own digital planner in my profile. I programmed in my next doctor's appointment and the ex-country meeting the next day. Logging off, I realized I wasn't too tired, so I organized the stuff in my book bag, sorting out my books and notebooks for my morning classes. I grabbed my history book and crawled into bed with it. There wasn't much else productive to do. Then again, after today, how much more productive could you be? Finally, I started to feel sleepy, so I set the alarm for 6 a.m. My first class was going to be at 7:30, so I wanted to get a decent breakfast and then be able to find my way to class. No need to be late right off the bat. When I woke up the next morning, it was to the harsh beeping of our alarm clock. Martin managed to crawl out of bed and shut it off first. Ugh, Hermano, why does this have to start so damn early? Early to bed, early to re. I only got that far before I got whacked in the face with a thrown pillow. Okay, note to self, Martin not a morning person. Or a fan of Ben Franklin. At about this point, I realized I was feeling queasy again. I hoped that fully waking up would help. I walked over to the sink and got my toothbrush. When I first tried to brush my back teeth, it was just too much. I gagged and dry heaved into the sink. I took it slowly thereafter, and managed to finish without doing it again. You're feeling sick too? Martin remarked. Yeah, I wonder if we got bad fish or something. We'll have something light for breakfast. I don't feel sick otherwise though. Weird, huh? I remarked, puzzled, and a little less nauseous than I was a moment before. Finishing off my morning rituals, we were ready to grab a bite, and by 6:30 the cafeteria was a lot more crowded today. The whole student body was there now, or at least all the ones eating breakfast. There were tons of girls, and all of them were in good shape. They pretty much ignored Martin and me. I didn't really think it was cold shoulder kind of stuff, more along the lines of what do you say to a male freshman at a formerly all-girls school anyway? Steinham Hall's breakfast didn't offer anything but light, actually. Fruit, English muffins, bagels, cereal, and toast were available. Fairly typical, but no biscuits and gravy, no eggs, bacon, sausage, ham, donuts, and other assorted fat pills. It made holding it down easier. By the time we got back to the dorm, I was feeling a lot better. Martin and I both took the meds we'd been given, and talked about our classes for a minute. Apparently, we didn't have any periods in common. I'll see you before soccer practice. I signed up for it yesterday. Later. Martin seemed pretty happy to be part of the soccer team. I hoped he'd apply himself to the academics. He was really smart, but I wasn't sure if he'd consider himself an academic like Robert and me. I see you later too. I'm going to try cross-country. I think I'll enjoy a little fresh air. Getting to class was a dizzying experience. There were so many people now. I suspected that the older girls had been kept away from all of us freshmen. They really didn't want them to interfere with us getting comfortable with the school, I supposed. Plus the integration thing. It was pretty easy on the eye, though, since all of them were in good shape. Classes went quickly. It was all getting to know you, introduction, syllabus, expectations, grading criterion, etc. I realized that this wasn't going to be a cakewalk at all. I'd be doing math problems, reading at least 30 pages per class every day, much more for my composition class. Plus, papers all the time. My weekends were going to be booked with studying, projects, research, and just catching up on rest. I got the feeling that college wasn't going to be this intense. Wollstonecraft expected big things from us, and was going to make us live up to our potential. Ms. Wilkinson's class was interesting. Mindy was there, and I said hello briefly. She smiled, and mentioned about possibly meeting at lunch sometime. It seemed pretty cool. I was going to have some female friends if I was going to be here for 4 years. We would be reading classical philosophy up to the founding of the U.S. Greeks, Old Catholics like St. Thomas Aquinas, and the revolutionaries like Voltaire, Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau. The most important one, she said we would be looking at, was Aristotle. I was really looking forward to digging in on these subjects. I was coming to the conclusion that Ms. Wilkinson had been right the other day. This was going to be one of those classes I was supposed to take first. Lunch period rolled around quickly, and went quickly too since it was only 45 minutes. I managed to get the books for my afternoon classes and head out to my first one, Algebra 2. To my relief, I recognized Robert and surprisingly Craig, who had been worrying about our weekends at Wollstonecraft Academy. "Hey Craig, I'm Dave, and this is Robert. Are you still worried about what we'll do on weekends?" I said, without any real malice. It was a few minutes until class started, and I wanted to get to know some people better. Sweet mercy, no. Craig's accent gave him away as being from somewhere in the deep-fried South. This atmosphere had to be even more alien to him than it was to us. I've done well in classes before, but woo, this is a lot. Since we're all taking pretty much the same classes, you want to get together and study sometimes, guys? Sure, replied Robert. What else are we planning on doing? This place looks tough, but the work doesn't seem all that odious. I'm going to have fun with this, in any case. I was having a hard time imagining starting calculus as fun, but that was in the future sometime. The afternoon passed quickly, and before I knew it the final bell rang and I was free to go get changed into the PE gear that had been issued to me. I stopped by our dorm room and saw Martin on his way out the door. We swapped greetings and he headed on out. My email was empty, except for a couple of campus-wide announcements about upcoming events. The PE gear I was wearing felt a bit, well, short, as if the shorts were a bit too short and the shirt would expose my midriff if I jumped up and down. I figured that it was just me though. As fashion goes, if shorts don't reach your knees these days, they're too short. The classroom where the meeting was similar to all the other ones, except this one seemed to belong to an economics teacher. Economics textbooks, copies of The Economist, volumes of The Wealth of Nations, and others lined the shelves of the room. I wasn't sure what to expect from this teacher. Apparently, based on the texts they had in here, I was expecting Gordon Gekko or Ronald Reagan to be the coach. I couldn't have been more wrong. Ms. Waylands was a short, lean, African-American woman in her mid-40s who strode in with a kind of power about her. She wore her hair very short, and had a face that could be described as strong features, with a bright, wide smile, and eyes that bespoke mischief. Good afternoon, I'm Ms. Wayans. If you're not here for the cross-country team, you're in the wrong place. Running for me is going to be the easiest and hardest thing you've done. I have 3 rules. Always be at practice on time. Always give me your best effort. Have fun. That's it. You do those things for me, and I don't care how sorry a runner you are, I'll get you a varsity letter by the end of your senior year. That's my contract with you. If any of you can't live with that, you can leave now. Personally, I don't think it's a hard bargain at all. No one left. Alright Skittleheads, here's a handout on what we're going to be running this season, weekly workout schedules, and the exercises I want you to do on weekends to keep yourselves flexible and healthy. As you can also tell, I'm an economics teacher here. You're all bright lads, I expect one of you has noticed the theme here. I raised my hand, and she pointed to me. The things here are all very capitalist. Do you find anything wrong with that? I'm sorry, but I don't know your name. David, ma'am. I said. I don't know actually. That's okay. You're a nice kid, so when the revolution comes, I'll make sure you go easily. She paused for a moment, then laughed riotously at our shocked faces. Gotcha! I used to be a radical in the 70s, always railing about the inequities of the system. Money corrupts and all that. Took me a while, but eventually realized that money is power, and it's how you use power that determines if it's a force of good or evil. I managed to finish off my education in marketing and economics, as well as my MBA in the early 80s. I managed to ride the market well for 15 years, and retired a rich woman in 2000, right before the market tanked. I teach her for fun, and because I believe in what Wollstonecraft is doing. I don't need the money. Plus, I get paid to exercise and keep y'all in shape. Ms. Waylands got up and left the room for a minute, returning with a large box in her arms. She set it down on her desk and opened it up. I know there's no such thing as a free lunch, I have something for all of you. In economics there's no such thing as a free lunch, but I'm sucker for fresh faces. These are the uniforms that y'all will wear when you're running on my teams. They're state-of-the-art, sweat-wicking, Gore-Tex fabric. They'll fit a little funny, but they're really comfortable, plus the band that goes just below your chest is part of it. Welcome aboard. I've got to go run my varsity girls now, so take one of each of those forms off of my desk, fill them out, and return them to me tomorrow. Be outside the new field house tomorrow at 4 o'clock, ready to stretch out and run. Don't worry, you'll be amazed at how much you can improve in one season. Any questions? No one said anything. Okay, that's all I have. Grab 3 shorts and tops on the way out, and I'll see you tomorrow. I took 3 of each and headed back to my room. As soon as I got back I got undressed and tried the uniform on. The shorts were typical skimpy lightweight running shorts, and appeared to be unisex. The top was pretty space age. It felt cool and light, and you could feel the air it let in circulate. It was white, with Wollstonecraft in blue lettering across the front. What was weird was this band of fabric around the chest portion of it. It felt nice, but I wasn't sure how it worked. Well, guys at NASA designed this fabric, so they had to know what they were doing, right?